So it's more and more difficult to get people that have, so we have 1% of the audience that agrees with me so far. Let's go to 100 at the end of the discussion, right? That would be the plan. So first of all, what happens if we don't do anything, I think is relatively clear. We will keep the asymmetry. Now, I had a discussion with the panelists before, and I think one of the things we talked about is how can you see this asymmetry in a different way? And we had a chat with Francesca on this. So would you like to say a few words about that first?
Thank you so much, and thanks a lot for being here. And I'm really excited about the panel. As mentioned, I'm Francesca Bosco, I'm Chief of Staff at the CyberPeace Institute, and the CyberPeace Institute, let's say, it's new kids on the block, if I can say it in that way. We are turning 2 almost, so not really about to walk, but almost. And so it's an independent and neutral non-governmental organization that is based in Geneva, was created at the end of 2019, and basically the mission is really to ensure and secure human rights and dignity in cyberspace. How we do this? Trying to reduce the harms of cyber attacks, and also to assist basically most vulnerable populations, and also trying to analyze what we know about cyber attacks to bring more accountability in cyberspace and work with, and this is also the reason why I'm here, with the public and the private sector to advance, let's say, discussion about responsible behavior in cyberspace, both at the national and international level, and also think, and that's why I'm head of Foresight, think also how the new technologies might have an impact, basically, on vulnerable population in cyberspace. Let's put this into practice. Okay, and this is also why I think it's extremely relevant to this panel, because I've been personally in my career being involved in developing capacity building and developing ecosystem for quite a long time. And I'm really glad here to highlight one part of the market that you just mentioned, that it's kind of like often neglected, or in terms of where the requests are. There are requests that are not filled in this moment, and that's also what we are trying to do. So just to spend a couple of words on this. So think that in one of the latest World Bank report, they said that basically 740 million of people are still living in extreme poverty. COVID clearly exacerbated the situation, adding, they estimated around 150 million. Especially in developing countries, the key essential services are provided by NGOs, but what we would call humanitarian NGOs. And think also about your daily life, or about let's say, the personal feeling that you might have in how can I participate to the society. Many of us are involved in supporting different type of NGOs in different fields. Well, they are a sort of like backbones in many economies, but at the same time, they are also the most vulnerable. Why? Because one of the biggest problems that they have is that they are custodian or a lot of interesting sensitive data. First of all, think about the beneficiaries, think about economic data, think about the money that they receive even from, let's say, big foundation and big donors. And I give you a practical example. We all heard about the Colonial Pipeline attack because it was a critical infrastructure, because it caused 4 million to be, basically they asked for a 4 million ransom. Just 1 year before, a small NGO in Afghanistan was attacked, and basically they were more or less 1 million, something like this, was stolen from their account, and basically they had to put their own money for saving the NGOs to be closed down. And this is something that is not in the news. This is something that the market is not basically perceiving as a need. Basic need of these NGOs is basically cybersecurity skills, capabilities, and expertise.
Mm.
And
okay, so you go in places where, let's say, we're not used to going also because you see all these cases which are very different from what we have. What we also discussed when we prepared was to talk about, young people have a very high attention focus, right? But we also talked about silver talent, so people that are a bit later in their careers and that need to reskill.
Right.
We also talked with you about the learning, the modalities of learning that are changing currently between these things. And then we talked about female talent. So perhaps the gentleman will talk about female talent with us because it's more powerful. Who wants to take that cue on female talent and the asymmetries that we can see in that area?
Yeah, we in fact, it's interesting on the IT industry. It's about 25%, which are mostly fulfilled by female. When you look from cybersecurity space, it's less than 10%. So it's definitely, in fact, the need to encourage the gender parity and, of course, having more women, in fact, embracing the cybersecurity space.
And you are doing things in that area, right?
Sorry?
You are working also in that area.
Yeah, so we definitely try to, of course, stimulate. And I think the biggest challenge when we look from the education is that if you are young people coming to like the baccalaureate and moving for the next stage in terms of universities, there is no real, in fact, career path to embrace cybersecurity. It's often coming late after being maybe an engineer, then you're starting to have a specialization about cybersecurity. So we really need to make sure that we are creating, in fact, the right visibility around this space, because as we see the digital transformation booming, plus the acceleration with the, I would say, the COVID, there's a new way to work from remote. There's much more complexity that we're all facing. I think this will stay forever. So it's more like a mission in the future for those young generation. And so we need to, of course, create the right stimulation for identifying those careers for the young people. So that's one aspect. And the other aspect is that it's also the lack of the people that will operate cybersecurity, because we are all looking about the top universities like EPFL, which are very high track to generate and, of course, produce top-end engineers that will make the software or make the program or make the new technology. But what the challenge we have right now is about just operating and putting in place, in fact, the system to protect against the current situation we're facing. So there is a lot of different kind of role that can apply on cyber. And so we have been also trying to generate, I would say, a fast track for having people they can operate within the next 12 months and not just in 3 or 4 years where programs don't start. So that's typically trying to, like we did in the US, we had a veteran program, so where we were supporting, leveraging our NSC certification, in fact, a conversion from those veterans to be acting on the cybersecurity space. So that's one kind of program that can be put in place. And then we need to look a bit more faster. There is really a need for urgency.
Yeah, and I would like to take the cue to talk about young talent. I would like to come back to the academy afterwards with you, but with young talent, we also have Sylvain, who sees them from the beginning, and then we could perhaps pass over to Laurent on the liquid talent, so you will also see how we can maintain and create more liquidity in the system. Okay, Sylvain, would you go first on the young talent? What do you do with your young talents? How do you prepare them for coming into this world?
Okay. So I will switch to French, sorry. Comme demandé, je vais me présenter en quelques secondes, comme ça vous savez mieux qui je suis. Donc, je suis professeur à l'école d'ingénieurs, enfin à la Haute École d'ingénierie et de gestion du canton de Vaud, à Yverdon-les-Bains. Et puis, depuis 10 ans, un peu plus maintenant, on forme des ingénieurs en sécurité informatique. Donc, on a la chance dans les HES d'être assez proche du tissu industriel. Donc de vous, pour la plupart, et de sentir les besoins du marché. Donc au début des années 2000-2005, on a vu une très forte demande en sécurité informatique, et entre 2005 et 2010, on a commencé à mettre en place cette formation. Et dès 2010, on a pu dispenser une formation dédiée d'ingénieurs en sécurité informatique, qui aujourd'hui rencontre un franc succès, parce qu'on a à peu près juste pour la rentrée académique, là, en première année, on a une centaine de nouveaux étudiants, donc 60 en bachelor, 40 en master, ce qui fait qu'on a à peu près 200 à 250 étudiants sur l'ensemble des années d'études, ce qui est assez énorme, qui ne répond pas encore aux besoins qu'on a d'aujourd'hui. Et un autre constat qui était important, parce qu'on voit une sorte de comme vous dites, d'asymétrie entre les besoins et la demande. Ce qu'on a essayé de faire, c'est ce que j'appelle la contamination. On a essayé de contaminer les autres profils. On a mis en place cette formation en 2010 d'ingénieurs en sécurité informatique et on l'a faite que pour eux, pour ce profil précis. Et après 3 ans, on s'est rendu compte qu'en fait, c'était intéressant de contaminer les autres profils. C'est-à-dire qu'aujourd'hui, un développeur, il ne peut pas juste ignorer la sécurité. Un ingénieur réseau, pareil. Et on a contaminé les autres profils de telle manière à ce que chacun ait sa couche, sa vision et ses bases en sécurité informatique. Donc on a des ingénieurs en sécurité qui sont qui ont une vue d'ensemble, mais on a aussi des développeurs qui ont une vision sécurité. Et ça, c'est vraiment important.
Ouais. Et c'est très intéressant aussi parce que ça crée de nouvelles attentes dans le marché,
Exactement.
de nouvelles opportunités d'intégrer effectivement ces nouveaux talents dans les entreprises plutôt que de devoir faire appel à elles à l'extérieur. On va peut-être revenir à ça aussi par rapport à la sécurité que ça peut permettre. Mais Laurent, il est prêt là pour réagir sur la partie aussi comment maintenir, avec de nouvelles formes aussi de travail, comment maintenir cette liquidité du talent en français ou en anglais, comme tu préfères.
Yeah, so actually there's multiple points we can see on your side and also on the side of the corporate like Fortinet. There's really a need to maintain skills in the workforce, right? And I think this is one of the biggest challenges that most companies have because of the pace of technology. It's very difficult for companies to say, making sure that all our workforce is properly trained, they have the right skills, I think. And also in the case of NGOs, like, you know, we want to have experts, but how would we find them? Do they want to have this type of job? Maybe it's not the sexiest job, which I think is great though. But I think it's, you know, for some people it might not be the most attractive job in the workplace, especially that might not have like the same budget for that. So I think there's this concept of liquid workforce that was introduced in 2016 by Accenture, and it's just, you know, conceptualize the fact it's actually the convergence of multiple phenomena, right? First of all is the fact that, you know, people are becoming more flexible with employment, especially Gen Y, Gen Zers, you know, my kids are Gen Zs, like, you know, they see themselves as like being flexible, right? I'm Gen X, so I mean, I have to, you know, put myself up to skill, like, you know, to make sure that I always have like, you know, decent skills to be part of the workforce. But I think this is where there's an interesting phenomenon because corporates and every type of companies, they can benefit from that liquidity. So actually liquidity is eroding the classical workforce with this. And the fact that we will have people coming out of universities and schools, you know, talents in cybersecurity, that will make themselves available on the project basis. You know, on the project basis, or like a you know, ephemeral period, like for instance, like a 6-month period or like even a year engagement as an expert for companies, perhaps working multiple companies. And one of the biggest challenges for us is how do we make this happen securely? How do we get talents inside the company without compromising our own security and being compliant with all the regulation that we need to abide to?
Yeah, great. So I just take a few questions from the room or from outside. So why isn't there more women in both the audience and the panelists? Won't it bring a change of perspective to have more diverse people adding to the discussion? And then a question for Francesca. Is the Cyber Peace Institute a front end for Microsoft? So people are critical here. There was another question just before regarding the trust and security being global issues. So the global solutions are important and not the local. Here we probably will be more in the local solution, however, because we want things to be concrete in this event. So you want to react to of course, I also reacted, like I said, where are the women in the panel? But we cannot do magic, so we need to work on society and opinions and this kind of things. I always like to have to use 100% of the workforce, not 50%. So we'll get there someday. But for the time being, I think you were apostrophed on the Microsoft issue. So how are you financed, and what is your goal, and this kind of things? Because you often have these questions.
I answered this one, but then I want to react to.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Like,
go ahead.
Deal.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So can I tell you, I wish we were front-end for Microsoft because we would be rich and famous, but no, we are not a front-end for Microsoft. The institute was created by actually different founders. You can find this information on our website. We were funded by Microsoft, by MasterCard, by the Hewlett Foundation, and by, let's say, small other donors and contributors, and we're open for funding. So if you feel like, definitely, absolutely yes, but no, we are not a front end for Microsoft. Just wanted to react to this, which is also, I think, a sort of like answer to the let's say, dichotomy between, to the pair of trust and security and also to global and local. Thank you so much, Laurent, because you nailed one of the biggest problems, and that's also why I started mentioning the NGO as a key sector for the market that is a little bit untapped, and how we can merge and how we can, on one hand, create the talent, but also retain and manage talent from the corporate side. We created basically this Cyber Peace Builders, which is a volunteer program for companies to adhere to. So basically employees can volunteer, and they, thanks to a training program put together with corporates and with the Cyber Peace Institute, they can volunteer and support the NGOs. So that's why I'm saying it's possible. There are concrete solutions. We launched it in Switzerland in July, and we are going to have a global launch in October. And this is also how you merge the local to the global.
Yeah, and I have another question for Patrice this time, I think, so which is related to what was just said. Are universities able to provide the technical expertise that is actually required, or is the knowledge fully in the hands of the largest tech firms? So you have a good vision of this through your activities. What do you think is the situation, and especially what will become, I think, also the situation?
So definitely, the university which is providing this cybersecurity or track are definitely delivering, in fact, very high-skilled people. So there is no doubt. The challenge we are facing is that the overall problem for IT is evolving on a daily basis. So before, I would say that the managing cybersecurity was quite easy. It was like around the corporate networks, and people was working inside the network, so it was very easy to protect, put in fact kind of a protection around. Now it's completely different, because the work are almost everywhere, can be from home, on the way. You have the data that are stored on the public cloud, it can be on a data center, and the technology to put in place to avoid this kind of ransomware attack, it's a combination of technology. So it's no longer like a product, it's more a platform play, which need to be automated, integrated, so we can leverage intelligent artificial, and then you, of course, you have to react on real time. So the challenge is that the university are delivering the top-notch engineer, and the volume of people that we are getting is too small, because the demand, I think we're about 3.1 million currently job open on cybersecurity space worldwide. So we know that 43% will be not, in fact, fulfilled. So there's a global approach, and so as I say, it's university definitely great. We need to potentially enlarge, so try to stimulate more people, because I think what you was mentioning, a number of students coming, it's great, but it should be 3 or 4 times or 10 times more, because I think just in the Canton de Vaud, we need more people. So it's, and then as I said, the need for having people operating those platforms, those technologies there, people even educating how to behave as a user. Because most of the attack, it's just like education, not to click here or how to react. So and that's the basic stuff that are mostly not done on many enterprises, except the very large enterprise. So yes, there is a need for accelerating this university, but there's a need to have multiple level. Maybe I think we talk about the transferring people from certain clusters to cybersecurity. Making sure also that those young people still, in fact, understand that cybersecurity will be there for a long time, because it's also a great place for, financially incentive. It's we pay people very high, so it's an industry which, of course, you can reward from financial. The challenge about the people that not necessarily be able to engage on Strong Life, they are tempted to go on the dark side, because it's very easy now with the tools as a ransomware, like in a box. You can earn money as a mule to just get a portion of the money. So it will be important that we take those people back to the right side. So it's very important that all elements from university, but from, I will say, this kind of education at the first level are engaged to create more and quickly, in fact, engineer but operator. So
there's a lot of food of thought in what you said. I think, first of all, the dark side and going back, so there will be something around integrity in the workshop we have at 1 o'clock, around trust in talent. And we'll go more in depth on that, because it's a very important point. Who do you hire? How do you measure? How do you hire them? what fit do they need to have. But you also said a few other things, which I would like Laurent and then Sylvain to react to. So, which is around working from anywhere.
Yeah.
And then there is another thing which also has to do with Black Ops, which is the osmosis between schools and business, which is always which is accelerating. I think it's a good trend that there is more contact between business or companies and schools. But first of all, perhaps this remote working, new ways of working also from that point of view. How can we ensure that we are in a safe place? How can we ensure that it's effective?
Well, one thing I think, and I'm a big proponent of diversity, and this, choice is the key, right? If you don't have choice, it's difficult because you don't want to make subpar, choices because you don't have enough possibilities. So I think being able to reach far from your company is a key aspect. And for instance, I know companies that now they have through new IT security means the ability to hire people directly in Africa. Or in Nigeria, for instance, we have a huge pool of IT talents that is completely unexplored. And obviously people in the Balkans, there's a lot of people, a lot of companies, all the SMEs, all the startups that I know, they always have a team, somewhere in the Balkans because there's a very good compromise between the skill level and obviously labor cost, right? It's not only a question of labor cost. You don't want also to, to compromise on that thing, right? So, but I think the key, and actually part of our company is actually in Serbia also because my co-founder is Serbian as well. So, but I think you have fantastic talents that you need to be able to reach out to and especially, be able to onboard them because not everybody is willing to relocate, right? So not everybody is actually possible it's possible for them to relocate as well. So I think having a means for onboarding people smoothly, securely, and be able to have them work remotely for any period of time, whether it's a small engagement or long-term engagement, is one of the key aspects that we need to solve. This is, one of the key, I think, challenges for digital trust. And by being able to incorporate such a mechanism inside the company with, technologies like zero trust access control or data loss prevention, this is things that we can really bring, and this has to be brought also at a cost that is competitive for SMEs and startups, because obviously bigger corporate, they can always put some mechanism for that. But how do you bring an NGO? How do you help them basically reach to these talents, economically efficiently? I mean, we have to have that mechanism. So I think this is something that we need.
Thanks a lot. Tu veux parler un peu de Black Ops par rapport à justement ce mélange entre les entreprises et les écoles et le fait de créer de la fluidité aussi dans le marché?
Oui, volontiers. Donc, Black Alps est une conférence de sécurité informatique qui a lieu normalement chaque année au mois de novembre à Yverdon-les-Bains, à Y Park. Et ces dernières années, avant la pandémie, elle réunissait environ 500 personnes de différents horizons, que ce soit de Suisse ou à l'international. Et Black Alps est relativement intéressante parce qu'elle fait vivre en quelque sorte la communauté, elle rassemble les experts du domaine, peu importe leur profil, finalement, c'est un peu le lieu où les gens se rencontrent, échangent, et c'est aussi un lieu où on peut donc faire du transfert de connaissances, échanger au travers des conférences ou des workshops ou d'autres moyens, mais aussi un lieu où on peut intégrer dans la communauté nos nouveaux talents. Donc la HEGVD est très proche de Y Park, donc les deux, c'est normal, le parc technologique et la Haute École d'ingénierie et de gestion collaborent beaucoup, et du coup on offre aux étudiants qui sortent l'entrée à Black Alps et on essaie de les pousser en quelque sorte dans la communauté, et après c'est à l'industrie de les tirer dans leurs entreprises. Donc c'est une belle plateforme pour pouvoir échanger au travers de la communauté et la faire vivre de différentes manières. Et une autre manière qui est aussi importante, c'est Black Alps réunit la communauté de cybersécurité, qui est vraiment une communauté très forte, mais on se rend compte des fois qu'il y a d'autres communautés et il y a des sortes de murs entre elles. Donc on essaye de faire des ponts entre ces deux communautés. Par exemple, on fait des événements spécifiques pour la santé, Et du coup, la communauté de la santé va rencontrer la communauté de la cybersécurité et ensuite créer des projets de recherche ou d'autres interactions par l'avenir. Donc ça, c'est vraiment quelque chose qui est important de créer, je pense, pour augmenter la sécurité de manière globale dans différents secteurs.
Ouais. Très bien. Merci beaucoup. Alors, le temps court et on est presque à la fin. Je vais juste vous lire la dernière question, qui est probablement pour moi. If the human factor is the weakest link in cybersecurity, why do we focus on tech engineering skills, not human skills? Alors, 100% d'accord, effectivement. It's very important to put the human in the center of technology, because otherwise, when you have blind technology, you will make mistakes and you will have issues with the human behavior for those that apply this technology. What we have seen today is a short version of the program. Yes, Black Alps is the place. So, indeed, and you have a fan club, Sylvain. So, I also forgot to mention, Laurent is very organized, so he published on Medium what he was talking about today, and it's also on LinkedIn, so if you want to have a look, you get more in depth. What we decided to do was at the end to have a sort of what do I take away from this debate and what is my commitment? So personally, what I take away is that we are not yet there for the human in technology, and I want to work on this at 1 o'clock in the workshop. And for the commitment, it's next time I facilitate a forum, I want to have parity between women and men. Now, let's go to the next takeaway and your commitment.
Well,
Please.
actually, on the takeaways, I mean, having worked in cybersecurity for so many years, I'm pretty positive for once. Actually, the takeaway is that there are amazing initiatives already ongoing. We just need to get together, actually. Deal, meaning that if we put together all these pieces, we can already improve first. So, first takeaway, personal commitment is make it happen and make it very practical. So, from the Cyber Peace Institute point of view, clearly develop the Cyber Peace Builders program, but especially engage with the current reality already existing to make it happen. I guess.
Okay, so my takeaway, yeah. So just thank you for mentioning. I just wanted to perhaps give you more details about what I was explaining today. So I just published today, this morning actually, an article on Medium that is called "The Trusted Liquid Workforce." You're welcome to take a look, and welcome feedback. It's about implementing new ways to source talent in the area of digital trust. And if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to discuss that topic with you because I'm really passionate about that.
Thank you.
Alors, du point de vue de l'éducation, j'ai entendu les chiffres de ma gauche. Là, je vais essayer d'augmenter un tout petit peu le nombre de nouveaux talents, mais ça ne va pas être facile tout seul. Et du point de vue de Black Alps, j'ai entendu dans les précédents panels des soucis avec d'autres communautés, par exemple supply chain, food et autres. Et donc, du coup, ça serait vraiment intéressant de joindre ces communautés avec celles de la cybersécurité.
Merci beaucoup. Patrice?
So it was interesting, of course, because there is much more, I want to say, attention about cybersecurity compared even to last year. So I think the Trust Valley is a perfect place for trying to create the velocity and the need that we have. What we are committing more, not myself, but more as a company that I represent, we pledge to train 1 million people by 2025. We have an academic program, so which part of this program and certification is free of charge. We did that together with the World Economic Forum, the C4C division. And the idea is really to create, in fact, a vocation for maybe new people, because that may serve all the industries, not just our side.
So 1 million within 2025 trained at your academy. Fantastic. Thanks a lot. Thank you for everybody. Sorry about the questions not being able to be asked from the room, but in 30 minutes it was very difficult. So I hope you had some enjoyment of this and a few ideas, and don't hesitate, of course, to come and approach one of us after this to get more information or exchange. Thank you very much.
Thank you.